Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we are kind of continuing our series on the HUD, and we're going to be adding this interaction text. Whenever you look at an object, then you'll be able to add text and customize it to say whatever you want to say. We will also customize it to change the text depending on the state of something. So for example, like on our lamp here, whenever I click or interact with it, and it goes off, then we change the text to now say turn the light on. And when I turn it on, it changes to say turn the light off. So this is not something that you have to use just for a lamp. You can use this for any actor you want. If you have something like a door or a window and you want to change the text depending on whether it's open or closed or locked or anything like that, you'll be able to set all of that up. And it's not too hard at all. You'll have different variables that you can change the text, and it'll be really easy to do. So before we get into all of this, I just want to thank you guys so much for your amazing support. It really is amazing. If you haven't already, be sure to like and subscribe, and feel free to leave a comment. It really helps the channel grow, and I appreciate it so much. If you want to support me even further, you can check out the links below where I have a Patreon that you can get early access to these videos, project files. I give away monthly assets, all kinds of good stuff in there. And I also have some links to some assets that I sell in Fab if you need some really good high quality assets for your game. I would love for you to check those out, and it's a great way to support me even further. Lastly, I just want to say that I appreciate you guys no matter what. If all you can do is just watch the video, then that still helps immensely and helps the channel grow. So thank you so much for that. I honestly just love helping other people out and just sharing things along the way that I learned how to do. So I really appreciate it all. So with that, let's go ahead and get into the tutorial. Okay, so I am in my little test level that I've got set up here where we created our lamps last time. And we're just going to continue on in here. I've added a little section here to add some more stuff. And I'm going to be starting out with our BP master item, or our base item here. Now, if you haven't created this or you don't know what this is, don't worry. I will go over this, and I also have links below that show how to set all this up. But let's go ahead and take a look at this. So if we look at our BP master item, a BP master item is just an item that I'm using as a general blueprint to use for anything that is going to be an item that I might want to interact with, just to give it some basic functionality here. Now, you can see with this blueprint, I just have very, very basic functionality in here. So the only thing that I've added is just a static mesh, and I've created a couple of variables to set the static mesh, and then an item scale. So in the construction script here, I'm just setting our static mesh to be the new item mesh here, and then just an item scale variable so that when I have it in my level, I can change the static mesh here to anything I want. And then I can also change the scale here, okay? Again, all this is linked below if you want to see how to set that up. And then, of course, I also want to mention that you can use this for any blueprint that you have, really, or any setup that you have. This is just the example that I'm using. We will show some more examples. I'll show one with the lamp, show you how to do it in a little bit different way. But I want to just get us started with just kind of the most basic implementation of this. So because this is an item that we want to interact with, meaning I want to be able to walk up and press my interaction key. In my case, it is the letter E. I am using our interface for interaction. Again, this is linked below how to set this up. We'll just really quickly run over this. So on our character, we have our interaction event here, where we are running our line trace that we created. Just a basic line trace to check if we are, or check what we are hitting. And then we're also checking the component that we're hitting. And then we're asking if it implements our BPI interact interface. And if it does, we are passing on the interact message there. Okay. So in my item, when I press interact, I'm calling an event dispatcher just to tell myself that I collected it. You don't have to do this. This is just an optional thing. I have a short delay here, and then we're destroying the actor, okay? So in practice, that looks like this. We walk up, we press our interaction key, and it disappears, and that's it. Now, what we want to have happen is we want to walk up, and when we get to be within a certain range, we want to have an interaction text that comes up when we are looking at the objects. So whenever our interaction dot is looking at our item, we're going to have a text that is displayed, and then when we move away, it will go away. So let's think about how we are going to go about doing that. We need a way to basically continuously check what we are looking at. And we can use our line trace for that, which we already have that function set up. But right now, we're only firing that line trace when I press the interaction key. So if I go back to my character and I turn my debug on, we'll just do, well, actually, let's do for duration. So now whenever I press E, you can see that we are firing out that line, and it is telling us if it's hitting something and going out a certain distance. But what we need to have happen is basically have that continuously checking to see if we are looking at something. Now, we could do that a number of different ways. We could just simply run this on tick. So if I get event tick and replace this here, or actually we could even keep it plugged in like that. So now when we play, you can see that every single frame on event tick, we are shooting out that line trace, and it is checking to see if it's hitting something. Kind of a cool effect. Kind of reminds me of those old screensavers. Okay, now that is a way that you could do it, and some people do run that on tick. It's not the end of the world if you do that, but I think that we can do that in a little bit more efficient way. Another way that you could do that is with a timer. So instead of every single frame, where that might be like 120 times per second, you could use a timer that checks that or runs that event maybe like every 0.1 seconds or half a second or something like that. Okay, now we could do that on the character. In this case, I'm going to do it in our actual widget that we're going to create for our interaction text, which let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to go to widgets, and I'm going to create a new widget. And I'm going to call this w_notification. And when we open that up, let's go ahead and add a canvas panel. Okay, and then we will get a size box. And for my size box, I'm going to anchor it to the bottom middle like this. And then I'll reset all of this. And then for the actual size, you can make this whatever you want. This is going to be basically the box that our text is going to be in. So let's try maybe something like 800 by 200. And then for the position, I want to move this up. Let's see. Let's set X to 0 and maybe Y to be like, maybe like -200. Okay, and then I want to set my alignment here to be 0.5 and 0.5 so it's centered. And then we need some actual text. So let's get a text and drag that in. And I'm just going to rename that interaction text. And then I'm going to do a few things here. I am going to set the vertical alignment to be centered. Let's go ahead and add some just kind of example text in here. So I'll just say something like interaction text example. You can change your font here if you want to change it to whatever you want. And then down here under justification, I'm going to make it centered. And then lastly, I want to auto wrap the text so that if we have If we have enough text that it goes on to the next line, then it will wrap around. Okay, let's go ahead and compile and save. And let's leave this open for just a minute. And actually, before I forget, let's go ahead and add this widget to our HUD widget. So I'm going to go to my w_HUD. This is the one that we created where we just have our interaction dot or our aim dot here. And now I just want to find w_notification, and we'll add that to our canvas panel. And then for the anchor, we'll make that full screen and just reset this to 0, and then it'll be in the correct spot there. Okay, so now if we go ahead and play, that should be showing on there, and it is. So obviously the first thing that we want is we don't want that to be displayed when we actually start playing. So let's go ahead and fix that. Let's go to w_notification, go to our graph. And what we can do here is I'm going to delete the event tick. On pre-construct, so pre-construct, remember, is kind of like the construction script. It's going to run things before we begin play. So in that case, let's see, we need to make this a variable, make our text interaction a variable here. Compile that, go back to graph, and then we can get this. And we just want to set the visibility. So on the pre-construct, I want it to be visible. That's really just kind of a debug, just so that I can see what it's going to say. Because if I set this to be hidden and compiled, then it wouldn't actually show up here. So this doesn't really affect the gameplay at all. This is really just for us. The other thing that someone mentioned in the comments, and I appreciate them mentioning this, it's probably best that we use collapsed instead of hidden. It's a little confusing because it seems like hidden would be what you want to use, but collapsed seems to be a little bit more efficient. So I'll be using, or try to remember to use collapsed whenever I want to basically hide something, hide an element, or hide our HUD or something like that. Okay, but on pre-construct, we want to have it be visible. And then on event construct, so this will basically be when we begin play, we will do the same thing, but we will set it to be collapsed. So now when we play, it should not be showing up, okay? And now what we want to do is we want to basically run that line trace continuously so that we're checking to see what we're hitting. Now, again, like I said, you could do that on event tick, but I think it's a little bit more efficient to use a timer so that we're not doing it every single frame. And for something like that, we don't need to do it every single frame because it's just really overkill. So we're going to use a timer. All right, so on event construct, which is basically begin play, we're going to set timer by event. Or actually, let's do function name. You could do either one. This is a little bit more clean because I don't have to have the event actually attached to this. And now let's actually create the event. So let's do a custom events. And I'll just call this display notification text. Okay, and what we want to do is run our line trace that we have on our character here. So in order to do that, we need a reference to our character. Now, if you've been following along with me, you will remember that I created a function in our blueprint function library to get my player character. So I don't need to cast to my player character in here and set that as a reference. I can just type get my character, and I have access to all of the functions here. But if you aren't following along with me or you want to just do this a different way, you would need to cast to your player character. Okay, so get player character, and then you would cast to whatever the name of your character is. So in my case, it's my character. run that on your begin play, and then you would want to promote this to a variable so that you have a reference to your character, okay? We're basically doing that exact same thing. This is just a little bit more condensed way to do it right here. Okay, so from my character, I'm going to call the line trace, and we're going to hook that up to our event here. And now I need to set the length here. By default, I think we're using 250, which I think should be fine here as well. Okay, so I'll do not 25, 250. And now if you remember how we did our line trace here, we're checking if we're implementing an interface. But in this case, we are not going to check our interaction interface. We're going to create a new interface specifically for passing our text through, okay? So let's go ahead and do that right now. I'm going to go to my interfaces and create a new interface. So blueprint interface, and I'm going to call this BPI notification. Okay, let's open that up. And I'm going to call this send out notification. I think I spelled that right. And I'm going to add an input, which is going to be the component. Now we may or may not need this, but this is just if we need to know if we are hitting a specific component in another actor. And that will just be a primitive, primitive component. And then for our output, this will just be our text. And it will actually be text. Okay. Compile and save, and that should be all we need. So let's go ahead and close that, and we'll go back to our w_notification. We can also close our HUD. I don't think that we will need that. Okay, and before I forget here, we need to actually type in our function name in our timer and actually just set up our timer. So I'm just going to copy my text here and paste that into the function name. And now we need to decide how often we want to run this timer. In my testing, 0.1 seems to work pretty well. You can try some different values, but that seems to work pretty well for this type of timer. And then we want it to loop as well. Okay, and now for our line trace, we want to check our hit actor here. We want to say, does it implement interface, or does object implement interface? And that interface is going to be our BPI notification that we just created. And we also want to check if it's valid. So let's just get an is valid. So if both of these are true, so we can do an and here. And then we want to do a branch. So if both of these are true, then we want to get our interaction text, and we want to set visibility to be visible. That is if it is true. Now, if it is false, then we want to set this to be collapsed. Okay, so let's compile and save. Okay, now the next step that we need to do, whatever actor we are going to want to have our text on, we need to actually add that interface that we just created. So in this case, my BP master item, I need to go to class settings, and we're going to add BPI notification. And then when we do that, you'll see that we get this send out notification here. And when we click on that, then we have our component, and we also have the text that we want to be displayed. Okay. Now at this point, we can test this because this should work. It's just going to display our text that we have in here. It's not going to display any custom text yet because we haven't set that up. But the way that we have set it up is our timer should be working now. So every 0.1 seconds, we're going to run this event, which is running our line trace. checking if we're hitting an actor that's implementing the BPI notification interface, which our BP master item should be now. And if that is true, then it should set our interaction text to be visible. And then when it is not implementing it, it should set it to be collapsed. So let's try that out. Okay, so when I walk up and when I move over, there we go, interaction text example. And when I move away, you can see it goes away. And you can see the speed really is perfectly fine. So if we go back here and if we set our debug type to duration, then you'll be able to see how often our line trace is going out. So you can see it's still going out very quickly, right? We could maybe even lower it to something like 0.25. If we tried 0.25, you can see how that looks. Okay, so that's going out a little bit slower. And it's still probably fine. This is not a very intense operation that we're doing here. So I think 0.1, whoops, not 1. 0.1 is going to be perfectly fine for us. There's a lot of people that run line traces on event tick. So, you know, they're running them 60 plus times per second, and it's not really that big of an issue. But I just don't see any need to run it that much, so that's why I'm running it on the timer like this. Okay, let's turn this off, and now let's talk about how we are going to actually change the text. And this is the beauty of our interface. We can, let's see, if we go back to look at our interface that we created this output for text so that we can call or send out our notification message here. So if I drag out, we want to do it on the true here. If I drag out and I type send out notification, we are calling that function that we created here. Do that again. Send out notification. And then our target will be the hit actor. And we will also want to plug in our hit component here. And now we can get our interaction text and set text like this. And the text will plug into our text like that. And now whatever we plug into the text here will transfer to our widget, and we'll set that text for the interaction text right here. So we can go ahead and test that out. If we just type something in, this is our master item, compile. Now let's test this out. So we walk up, and when we cross over, this is our master item. When we look away, it goes away. Okay. Now you could do the exact same thing with your aim dot as well. I know some people like to do that. You might want to even do something where it like slightly changes the dots to be a different style or something like that. That is basically the same process that you would go about doing that. But we're just doing it for the text here. Okay. Okay. So our widget is pretty much done. We can go ahead and close that. And let's go back to our master item here. And I don't really want to just leave it like this because this is kind of hard coding our text in here, right? I want to give myself a way that I can easily change this text. So why don't we just create a variable here? We'll promote this to a variable. And we'll call that interaction text. Okay, and then if we set it to be public, compile, then we can actually change the text in here to be whatever we want. So it's blank right now. Let's just try test right now. Okay, so now if we go and play, you can see that it says test. And again, I can change this to whatever I want. So this is an example. Okay. Okay, so that is kind of the basics of getting your text set up. for different items. And you can apply this to basically into any actor that you want to. So if you have something like a door, all you need to do is just implement your interface for your send out notification or your, what did we call this? BPI notification. And then you'll get your send out notification function, which you can then just create your variable and plug that up. Now, the thing that I know people are going to want to know is how can we customize that a little bit further to do something like with our light here. Let's say that when the light is on, I want the text to display something like turn the lamp off. And when it is off, I would want the text to display turn the light on, question mark. So how can we go about doing that? Let's first of all look at our master light. Okay, now this is just an example. Again, you can do this on any actor you want. I'm going to show you how to do it on this, but you could do this on a door. You could do this on a light switch, a window, anything really. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is implement our interface. So let's go ahead and add BPI notification. Okay, and when we do that, we get our send out notification. But in this case, I am going to have two different options that we could choose. We need an option that will say something like turn the light on, question mark, and turn the light off, question mark. And that's going to be based on whether the light is on or off. Now, we already have a variable in here for light on. So what I could do here is get my light on variable. And then based on the value of this, we're going to either select text A or text B. And so we can use a select node. If we just find select here, okay, then you'll see that we now have a false and a true. But if we plug the return value into the text, it's going to automatically convert that for us. So that's really nice. So now we have two different text variables, one for false and one for true. And I can go ahead and create variables for these. So I can promote this to a variable. So this will be the false, meaning the light is off. If the light is off, I want that to actually be the light on text. It's a little confusing, but just try to think that through as you're going through this. So I'm going to call this light on text. Okay, and I'll set it to be public. And let's do the same thing for true. So promote that to a variable. This will be light off text. Okay. And then if we compile, we can go ahead and set just kind of a default value in here. So for light off, I want to say turn the light off. And for light on, I want to say turn the light on. Okay. And, let's also make that public. Compile and save. And now that should just default to saying turn the light off, turn the light on. But we can still customize that as well. So because we made that public, we can now change that here. So if you had, if you wanted to change that to say turn the lamp on or turn, some specific turn the desk lamp on or something like that, you could do that. Okay, now let's go ahead and test it. So currently the light is on. So if we go up, then there you go. You can see that it's asking us to turn the light off. And if I press E, it's switching to say turn the light on. And then we still have it set up that the text is going to disappear when we are not looking at it. And that looks good. I still have my debug turned on for my character, so let me turn that off. Now, the other thing that I need to do, this is specific to my lights, but you can see, if you remember, you're following along in the previous video where we created these lamps, we created an option to disable interaction. And we want to think about that with our text as well, because if we have a light like this where we don't want to actually be able to interact with it, then we obviously don't want to display any text, right? So the way that we can fix that is pretty easy. We can just add another check in here to see if we've disabled interaction. So we have that variable for disable interaction. So we can just get a branch. And if disable interaction is true, then we just don't want to do anything here. If it's false, then we want to actually continue and display our text like this. Okay, so now when we're looking at this, nothing is going to be displayed because we've disabled interaction. But if we go up to one of the other objects that we have enable interaction on, then it is going to show. So yeah, that is pretty much it. I hope you guys find that useful. I know a lot of people were wanting to know how to do that, and it's a very useful thing to be able to do, obviously. So yeah, if you guys have any other questions, feel free to leave them below, or you can ask in the Discord as always. We've got a wonderful community there that I appreciate so much. Lots of people helping other people out, which just really makes me really happy, and I really, really appreciate that. And if you have any suggestions on things that I can do better, if there's something that I missed or something that I messed up, by all means, let me know. I'm always hoping to improve and learn along with you guys. Just trying to share things as I learn them and figure out things to do. So yeah, I really appreciate you all. If you want to support me even further, you can check out the links below to Patreon, get access to project files, assets, things like that, as well as items on Fab that I sell. And I always appreciate that so much. But other than that, I will go ahead and wrap up, and I will see you guys on the next video. All right, take care, guys.